Hey look, that's me, not following the advice that I've heard all my life and indeed, letting the bedbugs bite.
Oh, took a shit. Okay.
For the last year, I have assisted with research in the lab on these creatures, and today I'm gonna take you there to show you all the cool stuff I learned about them, the way we feed them, their insane form of mating, I'll have one bite me on camera, and we'll talk what to do in case you ever encounter a bedbug in the wild. Bedbugs are a big fuck you in particular to humans. They're adapted specifically for us and pretty specifically for beds too. Basically, for the last several thousand years, they've been infiltrating our sleeping spaces, coming out at night to suck our blood when we're asleep, then hiding away, leaving us to wake up with nothing but bite marks to clue us in on what happened. Today, they are still at it worldwide and are probably the most infamous pest there is. But in the world of behavioral ecology, they're actually infamous for something else. Not the fear and paranoia that just the thought of them instills in people, but the really weird way they have sex. Bedbug mating is something I was very involved with in the lab. I spent a lot of time observing it and facilitating it. It's a really unique thing to put on my resume. Bedbugs mate through this process called traumatic insemination, and it's as insane as it sounds. The females don't have a dedicated reproductive organ, like a vagina. Instead, the males just pierce their abdomen and inseminate inside everywhere. So yeah, what happens is first the male will chase and mount the female. The male will turn their body so that the adigus lines up with the female's right side, then they curve inward to reach under, pierce the abdomen, and start transferring seminal fluid. This method of mating makes bedbugs incredibly useful for studying sexual conflict, a common interaction among animals where the males and females of the same species evolve reproductive tactics against each other, looking to benefit themselves at the costs of members of the opposite sex. Traumatic insemination is an extreme form of sexual conflict because, well, I mean, damn, it's gotta hurt for the females to get stabbed in the abdomen like that. And we also know that matings lower female lifespan and their receptivity to other mates. We also see that females often don't have a choice in the matter. Here you can see a male completely locked in, even as the female runs around and tries to shake him off. So studying bedbugs can help us understand the selective pressures that drive co-evolutionary adaptations, not just in them, but in other animals with high amounts of sexual conflict as well. Okay, I feel I've talked about bug sex for too long. Let's move on. Another one of my responsibilities last year was to maintain a bedbug colony. That included feeding and transferring them, and a lot of cleaning up after them. So let's go to the lab and I can show you how that works. Okay, so I'm here in the bedbug room now. Inside these containers are the bedbugs behind me. If you're wondering why I'm in a red room, it's because most of the time when we're in here, we work with the bugs in the dark, like this. Because bedbugs are mostly active at night, we do most of our experiments in here in the dark, and insects actually can't see red. So here, to a bedbug, a fruit fly, or a beetle, they would be completely dark. They wouldn't see anything, but we can see red, and so we can kind of work with them here. It's important when studying animals that the lighting conditions match their natural conditions, because if we're looking for an effect of some manipulation, we don't want our results to be driven or influenced by an improper lighting schedule. But for today, I'm going to turn the lights on so that I can show you guys everything, so I'm just going to... Oh, Jesus Christ. Every time. But before any of the bugs get handled, in order to minimize the chance that anyone takes one home, the first thing we always do is change. Okay, so I've changed into my bedbug clothes. I don't know where to clip this mic. But yeah, okay, so I've changed. I'm gonna stick these in the freezer. And then when I'm done working with the bugs today, I'm gonna obviously change back and I'm gonna stick these back in the freezer. So here are the jars of bedbugs. They're covered in mesh so that the bugs can breathe and also feed through the top. Here is a jar of adults, and here is a jar of an earlier life stage. I'm pretty sure they're thirds. By that I mean they're in their third instar, or stage of life. Bedbugs have several life stages, and they need to feed each time in order to progress to the next instar. So to maintain the colony, we feed all the jars once a week so that they all grow up. Eventually, a jar will become full of adults, which would mate, and then lay eggs on these pieces of paper. We then move those egg papers into a new jar to let them hatch and enter the feeding cycle once again. Now, to actually feed these guys, there are two methods that researchers typically typically use. They either have a dedicated setup designed to provide blood for the bugs, or they just stick up their arm and become blood donors for a while. We do the former, thankfully, but it's actually really common for labs with blood-sucking animals for researchers to feed the creatures themselves. And I actually did try feeding a jar once with my arm just to see what would happen, and sorely came to regret it. I'll talk about that in a second. For the most part, I got to use our dedicated feeding setup. So here's me setting up a feeder with rabbit's blood. I'm wrapping it in parafilm, which mimics skin quite well, so the bugs are able to feed through it. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these little blood things that I made, and I'm just going to screw them on here, and these are connected to a machine that's going to warm the blood up to around 37 degrees, so the temperature of human blood, we literally just plop it on like that. And you can see how the bugs sense the heat and go down towards the blood. In the wild, they sense both our body heat and the CO2 we emit to find us in the dark. Now watch how these adults get filled up like a balloon and elongated when they're full. And notice after they're done feeding, they all start running up to the top of the papers. This is that evolved behavior at work. Once they've had their meal, their goal is to get out of there so we don't notice them when we wake up. Oh, and after they feed, they poop a lot. So all those black spots on the papers, those are bedbug poops. But yeah, a few months ago I got really curious about what would happen if I fed a jar of bedbugs with my arm, so story time. Everyone reacts to bedbug bites differently. Some are sensitive to the feeling while others are less so. Some get a terrible reaction while others only get small bumps. I wanted to see what would happen with me, so I took a jar of adults and just placed it on my arm like that. And I held it here like this for a while, and I just felt nothing. Like no prick, no movement, nothing. And so I figured they weren't feeding on me successfully for some reason, and decided to move the jar over here on this side of my arm instead, and still felt nothing. But then I started to notice that inside the jar they were looking pretty fed, so obviously they successfully drained my blood, I just didn't notice. The next day, my skin was the same. It was as if nothing ever bit me. It wasn't until a week later that they started to show up, and they started off more faint, but gradually began to swell as the days went by. They quickly became pretty gross and very itchy, and it was like this for around 2 to 3 weeks. It was like super uncomfortable. I tried not to scratch it, I just kept scratching around it like this. Also, I have problems with clusters of small holes or bumps next to each other, so just looking at it made me really uncomfortable. But yeah, the fact that I could barely feel an entire jar of adult bedbugs feeding on my arm is probably why people can take weeks to even realize they have an infestation. And you can actually still kind of see where the bites were. I'll try to show it to the camera. You see there, and there. It kind of looks like a faint bruise here. I have an actual bruise over here. You can see how it's actually lighter than it. So yeah, it probably wasn't a very good idea to do that. Let's do it again. Okay, so here I am preparing to get bitten. This time I won't be feeding a whole jar, I'm just gonna be feeding one, but I'm gonna let it roam free on my arm. For safety, I had 2 of my lab mates on hand, just in case the bug tried to make a run for it or something. Before I take any of these bugs out, everyone here is a highly trained professional, right? We've all been
2 to 3 years of experience.
Yeah, we all know how to do this, so don't try this at home.
Yeah, don't.
I feel like if you can try this at home, then it's already too late. Okay. But okay, let's just get to it. Here we go. So the bug got right to business and started feeding pretty much instantly. Is it feeding?
It's because they're so...
I think it's feeding. Again, I didn't feel anything. There was the tiniest sensation of negative pressure, but I only noticed that because I was paying really, really close attention. I also don't feel mosquito bites. I know some people feel those, so maybe it's just a me thing. What did change this time around, though, was that instead of taking a week to show up, the bite showed up the next day. Maybe my body learned what the bedbug bite was and how to react to it, or maybe this bedbug was especially starved and just took a lot of blood from my body, so it reacted quicker. I'm not really sure. Eventually, the bug was satisfied with its meal and began to walk around. Fully done, fully fed. Look at that. Wow. Then it decided to tell me what it thought about the quality of my blood. Oh yeah.
Little space right there. And now she's like, what the fuck?
Oh,
Took a shit. Okay.
Oh my god.
That's definitely what they do. Very rude. Get him out of there.
So we learned a lot about bed bugs today, like their feeding and mating behaviors, but what should your behaviors be if you ever encounter one of these guys in the wild? I need to stop saying in the wild, like in your house. Well, let's finish off by talking bed bug safety tips. First, you want to prevent ever getting the bugs in the first place. They can be very stealthy and unassuming if you aren't looking for them, so it's always a good idea to check any new place you sleep for them. Under the bed, around the bed, under the furniture, stuff like that. You should especially do this in places where people come and go a lot, like motels, hostels, dorms. All it takes is for a single mated female to start an entire colony. One person with one bug hitchhiking on them can cause an entire infestation, so you really want to be careful. It's also usually helpful to not have a lot of clutter nearby so they don't have places to hide, so regularly cleaning the area where you sleep and vacuuming, especially under the furniture, is probably a good idea. But let's say you spot one, which probably already means it's too late. What do you do then? Well, first thing to do is stay calm. I know, easier said than done. But the main damage that bed bugs do is psychological. They don't carry any diseases or cause severe physical damage, as far as I'm aware, so don't burn your house down or throw everything out yet. Your things can be saved. Steamers are a good tool for this because the heat they emit does kill bed bugs. Running your sheets or clothes through the dryer will also kill any that are on it as well. And make sure you are constantly doing a thorough cleaning and vacuuming of the area around your sleeping space. Of course, you can call a professional to help with this. It would probably save the headache of constantly being worried that a bug or egg is still hiding somewhere. In the lab, we pour boiling water on everything that the bed bugs touch. And of course, we place the clothes that we use to handle them back in the freezer. Every time I've talked to someone about this research, they've always been like, dude, what the fuck? So hopefully you found this more interesting than you did gross. I probably will never work with bed bugs again, so this was a fun way to make my time working with them into something I can look back on, either fondly or horrified, I'm not sure. Thanks for watching, and sleep tight.